The 1970s in the United States were a time of rapid change, social upheaval, and cultural renewal. This decade gave the world a unique atmosphere in which freedom of expression, the growing technological revolution, and the spirit of experimentation were intertwined. For those who grew up during these years, everyday life was filled with things that today seem distant and almost fantastical. A world without the internet and cell phones, when TV and newspapers were the main sources of information, and entertainment required imagination, communication, and patience. Every object, every little thing from that time held a special charm. From vinyl records and pocket radios to milk bottles at the door, and school lunches in metal lunchboxes with cartoon characters. This narrative is a journey into the past, into the details of everyday life that became part of the shared experience of the 1970s generation. It does not speak directly to the reader, nor does it ask to remember or imagine. It is a story of what was, with facts, context, and a subtle nostalgia that permeates every detail. It's a reminder of a time when children played outside until dark. Television ended with an anthem, and radio commercials were played live. All of this created a unique atmosphere, the one that only those who lived in the 1970s remember. Tabletop televisions with rabbit ear antennas. In most American homes of the 1970s, televisions were bulky boxes with wooden trim and two knobs for changing channels and adjusting volume. Antennas, nicknamed rabbit ears, were mounted on top and required constant tweaking. Sometimes you had to wrap foil around them or even hold them in your hands to improve the signal. Television was broadcast on only a few channels, and each evening began with the national anthem and ended with a test screen with a humming tone. Color pictures were just gaining popularity, and many families still watch black and white broadcasts. There were morning cartoons on weekends and sitcoms like Happy Days and Masek in the evenings. TV commercials were loud, often intrusive, but memorable. Adjusting the antenna became a ritual, especially in bad weather. Children often acted as a live antenna, standing next to the TV in the right pose. Changing channels manually meant getting up from the couch because there was no remote control yet. The sound often had a slight background. Interference was commonplace. The picture could bounce, shake, or be lost altogether, especially in rural areas. Parents forbade sitting too close to the screen, fearing it would ruin their eyesight. The television took center stage in the living room and often became part of the furniture. Every morning before school and every evening after dinner, the television accompanied the day, even if the news or weather forecast was on in the background. Metal lunchboxes with cartoon characters, school lunchboxes of the 1970s were true works of art. They were made of metal and decorated with colorful images of popular TV shows, cartoons, and superheroes, from Scooby-Doo to Star Wars. Each child proudly carried a box with his or her favorite hero to school. The kit usually came with a thermos with the same theme inserted inside. These lunchboxes were more than just containers for food. They became an expression of individuality, status, and a reason to talk at recess. Contents often included peanut butter and jam sandwiches, an apple or banana, and a cookie. Thermal insulation was primitive and food could spoil on hot days. Over time, the boxes became covered in dents, but that only added to their character. Some lunchboxes became collector's items, especially those with rare characters. Schools may have had rules against sharing food, but the boxes were enjoyed by children to show off. Over the years, metal has been replaced with plastic, but older versions can still be found at flea markets. Lunchboxes with themes like Dukes of Hazzard or the $6 Million Man reminded us of popular TV shows of the time. Children cherish these boxes and parents sometimes reuse them, passing them on to younger children. Although they were uncomfortable and clattered noisily when carried, they left a vivid mark on the school culture of the 70s. Sears and Montgomery Ward catalogs. Sears and Montgomery Ward catalogs were among the most important shopping sources for American families in the 1970s. These thick books came in the mail and took pride of place in the home, often next to the phone or on the coffee table. Their pages were filled with merchandise ranging from clothing and toys to furniture and farm equipment. Many children eagerly awaited a new issue so they could flip through the toy section at once. Before the holidays, catalogs were used as wish lists where children circled items they liked. In an era before the internet and online shopping, such publications were the primary way to learn about new products. Prices and product descriptions were accompanied by illustrations or photos, sparking keen interest. Parents often ordered things by phone or mail, attaching a check or money order. Delivery could take weeks, but that only added to the anticipation. Catalogs reflected cultural trends, from fashionable styles to popular appliances. Sometimes they were used as coasters or even makeshift stepping stones. The paper in them was thin but glossy, with the distinctive smell of printing ink. Many families kept old issues as keepsakes or used them in crafts. Today, the originals have become collector's items and nostalgia. The design of the catalogs resembled magazine layout with advertising slogans and colorful descriptions. Orange Tang. Tang became one of the most recognizable drinks in 1970s America due to its association with NASA's space program. Originally created in the 1950s, it gained rabid popularity after it was used by astronauts on space missions. This powdered drink was diluted with water and offered a bright, artificial orange flavor. Its packaging was brightly colored, with illustrations of rockets and slogans like "Astronauts Drink." Children loved it for its rich color and unusual taste, adults for its easy storage. Tang often appeared in school lunches and weekend breakfasts. The flavor was so intense that it turned the tongue orange. Advertisements for the drink emphasized scientific advances and the nutrition of the future. Tang was also available in other flavors, but orange remained the most popular. Many parents considered it a healthy choice because of the added vitamins, and especially vitamin C. The drink dissolved easily, making it convenient even for young children. It was compared to real orange juice, but the difference was obvious, both in flavor and composition. Over time, interest in Tang waned a bit, but in the 70s, it was in almost every home. In families with multiple children, the Tang jar was quickly emptied, especially in the summer. Today, Tang is considered a nostalgic product, and many people remember it as a symbol of childhood. Diner jukeboxes were an integral part of American diners in the 1970s. These bulky machines with flashing lights and chrome parts stood in the corner of the diner or next to the counter. Inside were vinyl records of hits of the time, from the Bee Gees to Elton John. For a few coins, you could pick your favorite song and hear it in the audience. In some places, there were mini versions of the machines right on the tables where you could flip through the song list and order a track. Music creates atmosphere, and in the 70s, it was an integral part of meeting friends and first dates. Jukeboxes gave you the chance to feel like a DJ and control the background music. Many teenagers would deliberately go to the diner to listen to new tracks. Records changed regularly, and popular songs were often repeated throughout the day. The owners of the diner were proud of their collections and sometimes organized request nights. The jukeboxes became a social center, especially for young people. Certain songs were firmly associated with certain places or moments. Repair and maintenance of jukeboxes was a technically challenging endeavor, and they were treated with care. Jukeboxes lost popularity with the advent of cassettes and digital media, but in the 70s, they were the lifeblood of every diner. Today, these machines have become iconic retro objects and symbols of a bygone era. TV and radio commercials with unique slogans. In the 1970s, TV and radio commercials were a true art form. It was a time when commercials became not only a sales tool, but also a part of mass culture. Many advertising slogans of that time are still remembered today because they were bright, simple, and memorable. One such example was the slogan, "Have a Coke and a Smile," which was used by Coca-Cola. This phrase came to symbolize the positive and carefree spirit of the time. Many advertising campaigns focused on creating emotional associations with products. For example, "I'm a pepper" for Dr. Pepper, or "Plop Plop Fizz Fizz" for Alka-Seltzer tablets. Radio advertising has also left a mark on history. The characteristic voice of the announcer, musical inserts, and slogans created an atmosphere that became part of life. Often the advertisements were accompanied by bright and memorable melodies, and the sound was such that it immediately transported to that era. Radio stations filled the airwaves with their advertising inserts, and everyone listened attentively because there were not many options, and it created a sense of belonging to a certain time. The TV spots also varied greatly in style and approach. They used simple but emotional scenes that dealt with everyday life. For example, car commercials often depicted family trips or exciting drives through open space, creating in the viewer a desire to buy that particular model. These commercials were not only advertisements for products, but also little stories that immersed you in the atmosphere of the time. The slogans were like mantras, repeated several times so that viewers would memorize them and become loyal to the brands. In the 1970s, advertising was linked to social identity. For example, advertising campaigns for products such as ice cream or beverages sometimes raised questions about consumer culture, social dynamics, and middle-class life. These elements created not only consumer associations, but also memories of a time when advertising was not as intrusive as it is today. Commercials became parts of television shows, sometimes even going to another level, creating mini-series or parodies. And if children didn't always understand what product was being advertised, they certainly memorized the song or poem that became part of their childhood. Phone booths and stamps on paychecks. In the 1970s, telephones played a much bigger role in people's lives than they do today. But it wasn't like today. Cell phones didn't exist, but instead there were street phone booths. These brightly colored booths stood on the streets of cities and were an important part of the urban infrastructure. It was common to walk up to them, drop a coin, and dial a number to make a call. There were several types of coins in the booths, and people were often confronted with the question of which coin to use for a particular call. These moments were often a source of nervousness, as someone might get confused about the order of coins or get the denomination wrong. At the same time, it was common to use phone cards to make calls rather than just paying for the call with coins. Some people even had special phone cards that they carried with them to be able to make a call when needed. The payment stamps that characterized the 70s also became an integral part of financial life. These papers were a kind of mini paychecks that indicated monthly expenditures for utilities or other obligations. All of these records were done by hand, and the person who checked the bills could expect lengthy conversations with company representatives. Paychecks turned out to be a frequent occasion for house meetings because you had to find out exactly how much you had to pay for water, gas, or electricity. Those who grew up in the 1970s remember how worried their parents were when unexpected expenses came up, and how important it was to pay the bills on time to avoid punishment or disconnection. Bands at school dances and rock and roll on the radio. School dances in the 1970s were peculiar social events. It was not only a time for teenagers to dance, but also an important opportunity to express themselves in the company of their peers. The music at these parties was saturated with rock and roll, which at the time was experiencing its golden age. Numerous bands such as Led Zeppelin, the Rolling Stones, and The Who created an atmosphere that simply mesmerized the youth. School parties were full of excitement and anticipation. Who would dance with whom? Who would ask for the first kiss? And who would dance extravagantly to rock music? But it wasn't just teenagers who loved these parties. Radio in the 1970s was the main channel for getting news about new music releases, and even adults sat behind their transistor receivers to hear the new hits. Radio stations broadcast the hottest new releases in the music world, and popular songs like American Pie or Stairway to Heaven made their way into the mainstream. School dances were the place where young people felt the first freedom from social boundaries, where they could forget about norms and just enjoy the moment, and music played a crucial role in shaping the atmosphere. Newspapers with ads for lost dogs and upcoming garage sales. Without the internet, everything was hand-searched. Before the internet, people truly relied on newspapers to find local events, ads for missing pets, or garage sales being held. In the 1970s, every morning started with a newspaper brought to the doorstep, and people would instantly open the pages to check the classifieds. Newspapers played a key role in everyday life, serving as a source of information about a multitude of things. From new jobs to exclusive offers, ads for lost dogs were commonplace. People wrote down details, a description of the animal, the place where it was last seen, and a contact number. These announcements were often the occasion for neighborhood conversations and community bonding. Garage sales were also a popular event, and the prepared notices often looked like small handwritten sheets that people taped to walls or posts. In the evening, people would go to the addresses given, sometimes discovering interesting goods at low prices. The find could be unusual: vintage toys, books, or furniture that had long ago stopped being sold in stores. This whole process was a time of simplicity and real meetings, when people trusted more their neighbors than the virtual world. Vinyl chairs that stuck to your skin in the summer, especially in the kitchen or car. In the 1970s, vinyl chairs became an important attribute in homes, cars, and cafes. They were popular because of their affordability and practicality, but they were used with extra care in the hot summers. The vinyl surface was smooth and shiny, but when it got hot outside, these chairs became traps for sweaty backs and thighs. They were especially uncomfortable in cars where the interior could get unbearably hot in the summer heat. The seat such a chair could literally stick to the skin, and with every movement felt unpleasant discomfort. However, despite this disadvantage, vinyl chairs were everywhere. In the kitchen, in canteens, in restaurants, and sometimes in offices. They were cheap and quite comfortable, and they were the ones often chosen for such places. Vinyl chairs often served as a kind of symbol of the American middle class, affordable and practical for everyday use. Eveready heavy-duty battery-powered flashlights, essential for sleepovers, camping trips, and checking for monsters under the bed. Eveready's heavy metal flashlights were an essential part of life in the 1970s. In those days when technology was just beginning to take its first steps towards compact and convenient devices, such flashlights were not just a source of light, but an entire symbol of safety and adventure. Their massive bodies and appreciable weight made them somewhat bulky, but this did not hinder their popularity at all. They were often used in a variety of situations, from overnight camping and hiking trips to finding something you need in dark corners of the house. Without these flashlights, many tasks would have been impossible, because in the 1970s, there were no modern portable LEDs or batteries that could be charged from a wall outlet, and the batteries used in these flashlights would quickly run out. But despite their not the most economical operation, these flashlights have always played an important role. Especially popular were large models with powerful light, which could illuminate a large area in the woods or in dark corners of the house. And although their use in hiking and night adventures was quite practical, for children, such flashlights became a real object of fantasy and entertainment. With a flashlight in hand, you could not only walk through the woods in search of adventure, but also check for monsters under the bed, search the dark corners of the house, or, in the best traditions of children's imagination, search for treasure. This was the moment when light in the darkness of night became not just a functional necessity, but a powerful symbol of confidence. It was thanks to these lanterns that dark nights turned into real journeys, into a world of fiction and exciting stories, and their use in real life was always associated with a special sense of confidence, safety, and readiness for any unexpected turns. Time with such lanterns was a time when every adventure, even the smallest, felt like something meaningful and important. Sticker and transfer picture books, with dinosaurs, fairy tale characters, and jungle landscapes. Sticker and transfer picture books were an essential part of childhood in the 1970s and were a true source of creativity for millions of children at the time. These books not only entertained but also inspired them to create their own stories, providing hours of fun activities. Stickers depicting animals, dinosaurs, fairy tale characters, and sometimes even historical events not only allowed children to express their creativity, but also opened up a whole world for them to immerse themselves in from the comfort of their own room. One of the most popular types of stickers were images of dinosaurs, which were probably one of the first ways for children to learn about the ancient world. Children had the unique opportunity to stick dinosaurs on the pages of books and imagine how these giant creatures moved around the globe, hunted, or had adventures. With the help of such stickers, it was possible not only to decorate a book, but also to build a whole story from which the child learned interesting facts about extinct animals, the development of life on Earth, and various historical periods. In addition to dinosaurs, there were often stickers depicting jungles, the depths of the sea, outer space, or even famous fairy tale creatures such as fairies, dragons, and unicorns. This gave children the chance to feel like explorers, going on exciting adventures through uncharted worlds. For example, the jungle scenes were not only beautiful but also intriguing, allowing kids to imagine themselves as characters traveling through wild forests, overcoming obstacles, and meeting exotic animals. The transfer pictures that were often used in such books turned each page into a real canvas for creativity. These pictures glued onto the pages of the book brought the text to life, creating a visual accompaniment to the story. Children could choose which images they liked and combine them with other elements to create complete scenes that matched their ideas of the world. Sometimes favorite cartoon characters or scenes from popular fairy tales appeared on the pages of the books, and sometimes mythical creatures and fantastic landscapes appeared, turning the books into real works of art created by the hands of a little artist. Books with stickers and transferable pictures gave children an opportunity not only to have fun, but also to learn independence. Each child chose which stickers and pictures he/she liked best and where they should be placed. This was a kind of first step to developing creative skills and decision-making. Working with stickers, children also learned patience and accuracy, because gluing a picture evenly or making a composition harmonious was a real art. In addition, such books promoted the development of imagination and had a great influence on the formation of early creative skills. As a result, books with stickers and transferable pictures not only brought joy to children, but also became an important part of their intellectual and emotional development. These books opened up a whole world where everyone could become an artist, an explorer, or even the author of their own story. Old beverage vending machines where glass bottles would drop down and be opened with a built-in metal bottle opener. The old beverage vending machines that were in almost every public place in the 1970s provided a unique experience for the customer. Unlike today's vending machines where drinks simply pop out of plastic containers, these machines use glass bottles. First, you had to insert coins, then walk up and select a drink. When the vending machine slid the bottle out, the sound of the metal bottle opener opening the bottle was a special moment in the process. These vending machines were not only a symbol of the time, but also a reminder of simpler times when the consumption of drinks was less fast and more traditional. Classic drinks such as Coca-Cola or Fanta were often inserted into these machines, and the bottles that fell out felt almost like a small gift. When the customer opened the bottle, you could feel the bitterness or sweetness of the beverage, and the buying process itself was something of a ritual. Aluminum trays of frozen dinners, TV dinners, chicken, potatoes, peas, and dessert all in one. Aluminum trays of frozen dinners, known as TV dinners, were a revolutionary invention in the 1970s. They were the perfect meal for those who lived at the pace of the modern world and didn't have time to cook. Frozen dinners were convenient and quick to prepare. You just had to reheat them in the oven or microwave. These trays often contained chicken, potatoes, peas, and a small dessert, making for a complete, though not very varied, dinner. Families, especially busy working parents, often used TV dinners as a convenient solution for evening meals. These dinners were sold in brightly colored packages with appetite-inducing food images and were much cheaper than a full meal at a restaurant. The time spent eating these dinners became almost a cultural moment, as these meals were often eaten in front of the television, watching late-night shows. Holidays with homemade costumes and paper decorations, especially Halloween and Christmas. Holidays in the 1970s had a special flavor, because in those days, decorations were often handmade and costumes were mostly homemade. This was true for both Halloween and Christmas. Halloween was one of the most anticipated holidays, and preparations began well in advance. Children would make costumes, often from improvised materials, old sheets to make ghosts, cardboard boxes to make robots, or simply using black paint to draw scary faces. These costumes were not always professionally made, but that was the beauty of them. Christmas was a holiday when the house was decorated with great enthusiasm. Paper garlands, homemade angels, and hand-cut snowflakes created an atmosphere of coziness and warmth. In addition, such festivities often brought the family closer together, with all members taking part in the creation of these decorations. Children remembered this process as exciting and joyful, because through such festivals, they felt that they belonged to something bigger, to traditions that had been passed down from generation to generation. The first pocket calculators, which were a marvel of technology and cost a lot of money, the first pocket calculators were a technological breakthrough in the 1970s. Until then, calculations required large and cumbersome machines as well as manual calculations. When compact calculators that could be carried in your pocket appeared on the market, it looked like a real miracle. What was particularly amazing was that they could be used not only for simple calculations, but also for more complex tasks, making them indispensable for students, scientists, and engineers. However, the price of such calculators was quite high, and not everyone could afford such a purchase. These were the first pocket devices with an LED screen, where the digits lit up with a red or green light. Such calculators were often placed on the desks of office workers or students as a symbol of technological progress. The importance of these gadgets cannot be underestimated, as they were the first milestone in the evolution of portable electronic devices paving the way for the more advanced devices we use today. Reusable glass milk bottles on doorsteps, which the milkman would take away and replace with new ones. Glass milk bottles were an important part of everyday life in the 1970s when milk was delivered directly to doorsteps. Milkmen who regularly visited homes would take away the empty bottles and replace them with new ones full of milk. This was such a familiar process that people didn't think about how important this ritual was in the development of the delivery system and the environment. The glass bottles were reusable, which reduced waste because they could be used over and over again. This way of delivering milk was part of a more environmentally friendly approach to consumption, which predates modern ideas of recycling. The presence of the milkman on the doorstep was associated with a sense of tradition and stability. In addition, glass milk bottles often had a distinctive look, and children loved to collect them or even use them for their own creative purposes. This process, in turn, created an even greater sense of connectedness to community and kin. The Sears catalog that was used to order everything from clothes to toys to furniture. Almost like online shopping, but on paper. The Sears catalog was an integral part of American life in the 1970s and served as a precursor to today's online shopping. It was so detailed and diverse that it became a treasure for every family. You could find everything in the catalog: clothes, toys, furniture, appliances, and even building materials. All this was presented with bright pictures and detailed descriptions. People flipped through the pages, selecting the goods they needed, and then mailing the order. Such a process was long and required patience because delivery could take several weeks. Nevertheless, for many people, it was the only way to purchase items that were not available in local stores. The Sears catalog also allowed for installment purchases, which allowed many families to purchase items that they could not afford to spend the entire amount on at once. In the pre-internet era, when access to merchandise was limited to local stores, Sears became a true shopping center that opened up a world of possibilities for everyone. Thermoses with plastic mugs inside school lunchboxes, often with soup or cocoa and always smelling a little strange. Thermoses with plastic mugs inside school lunchboxes were a common attribute of the 1970s. These thermoses were typically used to hold hot drinks or soups for kids to drink at school at lunchtime. Unlike modern thermoses, which are often made of stainless steel or plastic, these models were quite heavy and often had a metal body. Thermoses were often used to carry soup, cocoa, or tea, and occasionally they had a distinctive odor. Not the most pleasant, but familiar and native. Lunchboxes with these thermoses became a sort of symbol of the school routine and were often filled with the same foods: soup, sandwiches, and fruit. Despite their simplicity, the thermoses created a sense of coziness and home-like warmth in the school lunchroom, where students could, like adults, enjoy hot drinks at recess. It was one of those small pleasures of childhood that accompanied every school morning. All this is part of the unique world of the 1970s, which in its diversity was both colorful and simple. These items, habits, and rituals left those who lived through this period with a sense of warmth and comfort associated with everyday life, where technology and everyday life were intertwined in surprising and often amusing ways. Many of these elements, whether homemade Halloween costumes or glass milk bottles on the doorstep, are reminders of a time when life was less technological but perhaps more human. Progress changes our world every year, but the memory of such details remains an important part of our culture and history.